Parents have a right to know what their kids are being taught in the classroom. Teaching kids that some are oppressors is just as bad as teaching other kids that they're always going to be victims.
For real? That was South Carolina Senator Tim Scott speaking at the Reagan Library this week as states across the country ban textbooks and prohibit the teaching of certain topics in schools. Like what's going on in Florida, where on Friday, examples were finally released to explain why 54 math textbooks were banned for including, quote, prohibited topics. All that concern espoused by Senator Tim Scott and other Republicans about classroom instruction ignores a big fact. Schools are filled with more than just straight, white, cisgender folks who are being robbed of their education. Joining me now, MSNBC contributor and senior opinion writer and columnist at the Boston Globe, Kimberly Atkins-Stohr. She is also a co-host of the hashtag Sisters-in-Law podcast. We also have MSNBC legal analyst Maya Wiley and contributing editor for The Grio, Sophia Nelson. She's also the author of Black Woman Redefined. And together, they comprise Black Lady Courtroom. Welcome back to the Sunday show. All right, Kimberly, I'm going to go down the row here. Your reaction to Tim Scott's rant on critical race, quote unquote, critical race theory, teaching white kids that they are oppressors.
Yeah, I would love to see the curriculum that actually exists, teaching children that they are oppressors in any schoolroom. This is what's sad about this. A friend of mine who was born in Germany and came to the United States to go to college, is now a citizen, told me once years ago how surprised he was how in college the treatment of American history really kind of glossed over, for the most part, and ignored some of the atrocities, including the enslavement of Black people, in a way that didn't happen when he was growing up in Germany. They were very frank and clear about exactly what happened, for example, leading up to World War II. And one reason was to ensure that it wouldn't happen again. So what's really sad about Senator Scott's comments is that we have an opportunity here to say, look, let's teach our children, let's teach future generations what not to allow to happen again. And let's empower these kids where when they grow up, they can be a part of the solution. They can help fight against the racism and bigotry that they see, as opposed to coddling them and giving some false impression that they're being harmed in some way. But he won't do that because Republicans love a culture war. And if they tell the truth about history, it makes it harder to wage culture wars.
And culture wars are strictly emotional wars at that. Maya Wiley, your thoughts on Senator Scott?
Well, so first, I just want to say, for me, these aren't culture wars. These are wars over power. And it's really about whether it's a plural democracy, we're all going to have power in it. If you control history, if you control knowledge, if you control information, then you are controlling who has power and who doesn't. And when we go back to the history of textbooks, here's what's so offensively wrong about what Senator Scott said, is in Atlanta, Georgia in 2012, the elementary school math book actually had a homework assignment that said Frederick gets 2 beatings a day. How many beatings does Frederick get after 1 week, after 2 weeks? Or in San Antonio, Texas, where the textbook assignment after the Prentice Hall textbook, I'm talking about 2018 here, after the Prentice Hall textbook talked about how some slaves probably were perfectly happy with slavery, had a homework assignment for the children that said, please share the positives and the negatives of slavery. The positives of slavery, really? And the Southern Poverty Law Center actually had a study recently that showed that only 8% of high school seniors understood slavery to be a major cause of the Civil War. Now, I ask you, how do we have a rational democratic debate about voting rights in a country that hasn't been able to confront the fact, not just that we have historically refused to teach our history. because that's the reality. This isn't about calling anyone an oppressor. This is about understanding who we are, how we got here, and what problems we are still trying to solve. That's not a blame game. That's about problem solving. That's what democracy is for. And what Tim Scott is participating in is a willful political strategy to engender fear in white people and to play on it, rather than suggesting that there's a path to democracy, for a plural democracy, for all of us, no matter who we love, how we worship, what we look like, or who we're descended from. And that's the democracy we need to be building together.
Mm-hmm. And so, and Sophia, as the former Republican here on the panel, what's up with your boy Tim Scott?
Well, one, he's not my boy, but two,
I'm just messing around.
listen, seriously, Jonathan, first of all, he's running for president. That's clear to me. The vote that he took on historic Justice Ketanji Jackson was very disappointing to me, because as the only Black conservative, Black Republican in the United States Senate, I mean, she was qualified. There's no argument about that. She's a historic first. When he didn't vote for her, that told me a lot. Now, this debate over critical race theory, look, I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and as everybody knows, our last election was decided on this issue. Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat, blew it when he said parents didn't have a right to decide what their kids are taught in school, and Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, seized on that and talked about things like critical race theory, et cetera, et cetera. And so what my concern is, both Kimberly and Maya are right. I can't disagree with anything they've said. My concern is, however, is that a large portion of our nation, particularly here in the Commonwealth, as an example, these weren't right-wing Republicans that voted for Glenn Youngkin. These were moderate, white, independent women who voted for the governor of Virginia now that we have. So let's disabuse ourselves of this notion that somehow this is some radical right-wing thing. It's not, folks. There's a large part of this nation that stays quiet and that buys into this type of stuff. And the reason there's ignorance about this is because we don't teach history accurately. We don't teach why critical race theory in its purest form, why it's a very important thing to teach about structures of racism that persist from the time this country was founded forward. That's where we are, and that's the problem.
Right. And just to be clear, critical race theory is taught in law school.
Absolutely. I took it in law school, as we all did. Yeah.
Oh, you all did. So you know that ain't nobody trying to teach that in elementary school or middle school or high school. This is some complex stuff. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, but before we go, Kimberly, I understand the Boston Globe has a groundbreaking new project that's about to launch. Quickly, what can you tell us about it?
Yes, it's called The Emancipator. It's a joint project between Globe Opinion and the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. And it takes the tradition from abolitionist newspapers to look for anti-racist solutions to the racism that is in the structures and institutions. The same thing that Sophia was just talking about. It launches tomorrow. You can go to theemancipator.org. My series addresses ways to end the racial wealth gap.
All right.